Organizing your files outside of Premiere is smart, but keeping things organized inside of Premiere is critical. In this lesson, you will learn how to organize your files inside of Premiere. So organizing your assets and your files inside of Premiere is pretty simple, and you can choose how much organization you want to use depending on the complexity of your project. If you have a project that only has 3 or 4 assets, you may not need to make a whole bunch of folders and change label colors and rename your clips. But as your projects become more complicated, it's going to really help to keep things organized. One of the easiest ways to keep your project organized is to use bins. Now, bins are basically video editing jargon for folders. You see, they even look like a folder icon. And this is going to be very similar to how you keep your folders organized, or how I hope you keep your folders organized outside of Premiere. You can see that when I imported these files right here, Premiere preserved the folder structure for me, and these files are organized exactly like I had them organized outside of Premiere, which is very handy. When you're importing things from the media browser, that doesn't always happen. If you have to go in and grab those MTS files like we talked about, they are not going to come in that folder structure. They're just going to be imported into the project panel as files. Now, if you have a particular folder selected, if I create a new folder here and I call this C100, and I go to the media browser, and I select a folder that has some footage from my Canon C100, so I go in here, C100, there's that private folder. If I double click on that, I can see some MTS files. So if I just import one, because I had the C100 folder selected, it's going to put this MTS file in that C100 folder. Otherwise, if I had nothing selected and I went and imported that file, it's not going to put that MTS file in a folder. Now, this can get very confusing when you have multiple shots from multiple cameras and you have the same exact file names. So if I was shooting with 2 Canon C100s, they would both have the first files listed as 00000.mts. And that could get very confusing. So making folders and putting those files into folders is a very easy way to keep your projects organized. I'm just going to undo that last import because I don't need 2 versions of that file in there. Oftentimes, if I have more than one folder with video assets in them, I will create another folder called something like footage, and then I'll take these folders and put them inside the footage folder. And that way, when I collapse everything down, it's much neater and it's much tidier, and everything is nice and organized. I also like to create folders for other types of media. So another way you can create a folder is to just drag the files right onto the new bin button. So I might call this still or stills. And then because this is a graphic element, I might drag this into another bin here and call this graphics. And that way, if I were to, say, grab a few photos, I could import these, and when I do, I'm going to drop them right into the stills folder. And then I can take these and select them, drag those to a new bin, and I'll call this photos. So now I'm really starting to get things organized really nicely in my project. If I have any audio assets, I like to put those in their own folder. So I'll make an audio folder. If I have any titles, I usually create a folder for all the titles. If I have more than one sequence, I will create a sequence. And I'll usually create another folder called mats. And inside the mats folder, I will put color mats. And inside the mats folder, I usually will put some different color mats. So if I right click over here, I can choose new item and then choose color mat, which is almost off the screen here. I can also do it up here, file, new, color mat. And I can select my settings here. I'm just going to click OK. And then maybe I'll just make a white mat. So I'll label this mat. And I'll put that white mat in my mats folder. And for me, using these bins really helps to keep my projects organized. Now, another way you can keep your project organized is by renaming your assets. If I look in my footage folder and I go down in the Cheryl Cookie instructional assets, you'll see that all of these clips here are already named. And that's because these are not the original files from the camera. So to make the files a little bit easier to work with, what I did is I took the raw camera files and then I edited some shorter clips from them so that we would have something to work with in this course. When I exported those files, I went ahead and named them appropriately so that we could keep track of what files we were using. Normally, you're going to be working with raw camera files, and they're not going to have these nice names. They're going to have, the strange manufacturer names like 00000.mts or MVI_1957.mov. Just like you find with this file right here. But the problem is when you get a bunch of these files, it can be hard to know which of the files contain what footage. So one of the ways that you can make that a little bit easier is just to rename the items or the assets in your project. I'm going to double click on this clip and I can see that this file here is a shot of a table with some photo stuff on it. So if I want to keep this organized, what I would do is click on the clip and then click over here on the name, and now I can rename this. So I may rename this clip table with photo stuff _00000.mts. Alternatively, I could just name this table with photo stuff, and that's fine too. That's not going to affect the actual file. In fact, if I wanted to find where this file was located, what I could do is right-click on it, and then right up here, there's an option to reveal in Explorer. And when I do, it's going to pull that file up, and I see it's right here. So renaming the clips and renaming the assets in your project is a great way to keep things organized. This also helps with photos as well. You can see I have 3 photos that I imported here that are named 7D photo _img _4946.jpg. Not super helpful. So I could rename this to something like men's shoes, gray background. I could say this is men's shoes, blue background. And finally, I could say that this is men's shoe profile. And this will make it much easier to navigate my project, especially when it comes to searching for files. Now you see there is a search box up here. So if I wanted to find some of the footage that has eggs in it, because I named those clips, I can just type eggs right up here. And now I can see these 2 clips are labeled adding the eggs. If I want to find some of the shoes, just type in shoe, and now I can find those files. So very easy to find files, and it works especially well if you go ahead and rename your clips. Another way you can help keep your project organized is to change the color of the labels. So you can see if I go back into this footage folder here, and I open up these 2 folders, you can see I have a bunch of clips that are under the wide bin here, and a bunch of clips that are under the cutaway bin. And over here, all of these are labeled blue. Well, when I'm editing, to make it easier for my eye, I could select these files, and I can right-click over here and change the label color to something like violet. Now when these appear on the timeline, they will be violet, and they'll be easier to distinguish with the cutaway shots. So using bins, renaming your clips so you can find them easily and search for them, and changing your label colors are 3 very easy and basic ways to keep your projects organized. In the next lesson, you're going to learn how to create a sequence and add your assets.